As Black creatives, I believe it's important for us to get out and explore the African diaspora and expose ourselves to art that was made by Black people who live and work around the world. Now, of course, with the internet, you don't necessarily have to travel to do that, but traveling enhances the experience of consuming art by international Black creatives. I did just that this past holiday season during Thanksgiving week of 2024 when I traveled to London. I went to London for a friend's graduation from law school, and it was really an amazing experience. I really enjoyed the opportunity to see this world-class city up close and personal. One of the best parts of seeing London was walking around Brixton, which is an area that is known for having a lot of immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. It was so inspiring seeing murals of Black performers like Sidney Poitier. There was a mural we passed on the street that was larger than life, like Sidney Poitier himself. What that mural represents to me is that Londoners appreciate the contributions of people of African descent who have made an impact on the world. Brixton also has a museum that is dedicated to people of African descent, but unfortunately, the museum wasn't open on the day that we were in the area. Another exciting part of the trip was walking around the Brixton Market, which is this huge marketplace that is known for having food and merchandise from Africa and the Caribbean. You see everything from hair salons to restaurants to produce stands. My friends and I got to eat at an authentic Caribbean restaurant. Now, interestingly, the restaurant we ate at was actually owned by a French woman who had immigrated to England, but a lot of the people on staff, a lot of the people who were actually making the food were people from Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean, and they made the most mouth-watering soul food, Caribbean soul food, like rice and beans and plantains and different meat dishes. And I mean, it was some of the best food I've ever had in my life. An interesting coincidence is that around the time that my friends and I took the trip to London, I happened to see the movie Playing Away. The 1986 comedy is about an Afro-British cricket team whose members are of West Indian descent. Think of the movie Cool Runnings, only with cricket instead of bobsledding. I think that's what the sport was in Cool Runnings. So in Playing Away, the Black British cricket team travels to an all-white small town in England to play a charity match, and hilarity ensues. Playing Away was directed by Horace Ove, a Trinidadian-born British filmmaker. Ove has the distinction of having directed the first British feature film that was directed by a black filmmaker, and that was a 1976 movie called Pressure. Both Pressure and Playing Away are a bit hard to find, but if you're able to track them down, I highly recommend checking them out. In addition to Brixton, another area of London that really made an impression on me was the area around Big Ben. Now, this area is really touristy, of course, and it's near Parliament. And I was really, really impressed when I saw a series of statues that included Nelson Mandela. This life-size statue of Nelson Mandela is situated among statues of other world leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Winston Churchill. Now, as a creative, I'm a writer and a filmmaker. One of the art forms that inspires me most is music. And while I can't sing or play any musical instruments, I love all different types of music. Walking around the streets of London, I listened to music by British artists, and something that occurred to me was how much American pop music and pop culture in general has been made by British artists, and not only British artists, but Black British artists. Artists such as Loose Ends, Maxi Priest, Estelle, and Princess. Those are R&B artists, and of course, one of the biggest British pop groups in history, the Spice Girls, has a black member, Melanie Brown. And while in London, I also listen to hip hop music, and we tend to think of hip hop as a uniquely American art form like jazz that was created by African Americans. But a lot of early hip hop, at least, had several very successful black British artists like Slick Rick and Moni Love, who I listened to while I was over in London. And of course, I could not be in London and not listen to the music of Sade. I listened to Sade so much while I was over in London. And this might sound kind of corny, but when I visited Buckingham Palace, I stood outside the gates of this historic, well, world famous edifice listening to Your Love is King by Sade. I told you it was corny, but I had to do it. And a cool thing was that one time when my friends and I were walking by a newsstand, we were coming out of the subway. I happened to glance over at this newsstand and saw a magazine cover with Sade like hanging from this newsstand. Number one, it was cool that Sade is still making the covers of magazines in England. But it was also cool to see that there are thriving newsstands, thriving stores where you can still buy magazines and newspapers, and print media is still relatively popular in England. So if you get the chance, definitely get out and travel and explore the African diaspora and consume art created by Black people around the world. This is the second in a series of videos about my trip to London. In the first video, I talked about a coincidence that happened when I was just walking around Kensington where my friends and I stayed, and I came across a church with a name very similar to a fictional church that I made up in a book that I wrote. So please check out that first video in this series if you get a chance. And in the next video, I will take you on a virtual tour of a world-famous landmark that every writer should see at least once in their lifetime. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.